Hey everybody, this is Rydo and we're back to Pinball Arcade. So quite a bit has kind of happened since the last time I recorded. It's been a couple days. I had ordered what is an At Games Legends Gamer on a pretty deep discount, which has um, two fight sticks and a mouse trackball in the middle and two pinball buttons on the left, two pinball buttons on the right. So I was playing that earlier, playing Earthshaker, and while it doesn't have any haptic feedback in either direction, is one thing, particularly for pinball, that you feel like you're missing there. So you can't shake the fight sticks device, as it were, and then the actual pinball table in the game would shake. It doesn't have direct like Microsoft Xbox controller identification either, so you kind of have to map the buttons to the keyboard, which works with Pinball Arcade, but then you're probably going to need to use something like Joy 2 Key um, to remap the buttons, or just remap the buttons in the settings themselves. So it's a kind of a roundabout way for a game to have controller support, and then you have to use you have to map the buttons to a keyboard and then use it as a keyboard. I could potentially no, I couldn't figure out how to get it to actually even work. Trying to remap the joystick controllers. One thing I'll say there is, while I'm not going to play any of these games while I'm recording them with this device, I played a lot better, uh, which makes an interesting argument around maybe you don't want Rumble enabled, which, in fairness, you can come over here to settings and, well, somewhere around here, uh, you can, like, I couldn't map these controller settings, but you can map it just to this, uh, which puts you in a weird position because you need something for the plunger, which I just used the right fight sticks most rightmost button, which would be the closest to where a plunger is, since the Legends Gamer doesn't have a plunger in it. That would be an expensive add-on. It looks like there probably is enough room where you can add something like that if you wanted to get crazy with it, but I'm not sure these buttons are quite good enough or if it's really worth the investment. This was a device that came also with its own separate collection of about 100 games, and it has a little puck, kind of like a Chromecast, that you can install software on Windows, and I'm going to test that out later and see if I can how many games and how well games stream from a Windows PC to the puck in potentially a different room. But yeah, even with everything it comes with, it's like asking retail price of like $280 is way, way too much. It's getting far too close to a Nintendo Switch. But since I got it for just shy of 100, just a little less than 100, that was a pretty good deal. Um, I'm thinking I might hook up a Raspberry Pi on the inside of it. You don't need it on the inside, of course. You could just do it on the outside. I might see if there's enough room for a hard drive in it, because a Raspberry Pi with a USB 3.0 hard drive could hold a lot more ROMs than any micro SD could do. Uh, but yeah, that doesn't have anything to do with pinball per se, because RetroPie in particular, not really, um, not really designed to emulate pinball. Uh, Unfortunately, because the LibRetro RetroArch software would probably be more robust in general if it could emulate pinball. It just doesn't have the elements. There is a pin MAME, and ironically, on the Internet Pinball Database website, all the ROMs seem to just be hosted because nobody cares. Because it's such a different thing to have the ROM of a pinball table when you don't own the table. Like, you would need that special equipment or an emulator software, and then you would have to wire whatever that equipment or emulator device was to every single flipper and light and kickback and slingshot. So you'd have to effectively hand build a pinball table custom to every single pinball, which would cost you probably more than just finding a decent condition pinball table for anything you did want to play, and it hardly would be very interchangeable. You'd have to invent some whole new modular Lego style system in which you could just plug ramps and put them apart and move them around. Uh, like you basically need Star Trek holodeck technology to potentially have one device that could emulate multiple tables. Anyways, that's what I've been up to. Today we're going to look at Elvira Party Monsters. Now, I did not want to immediately jump into this, but I think I need to kind of roll back some of the things I've been saying, because I did a little bit more research. I thought there was a lot more adult games and adult pinball tables. And as far as I can tell, researching it, at most there was a generous dozen adult games that would have had nudity or excessive amounts of cussing. Now, in fairness, the South Park table does have an excessive amount of cussing, but it has like an adult mode, and you can just go and program it into a kid-friendly mode, and it will take out all of the dialogue. So really, it would be just the visuals on the table itself that would be something you couldn't change. And while there were about 2 Playboy tables, there's not really a lot of other things. And it's generous to say there was 12, because I would say probably about 6 of them were actually conversion kits. They would convert an existing table and just change the art, change the backglass art, change the table art, so that there was nudity in it. As best as I can figure, what happened here is that pinball was, for one reason or another, being held to the Hays Code, and they did not have either enough of a profit motive to put adult games in adult areas like bars alone, or they weren't allowed to, except for in some rare occasions. It kind of makes sense in 2 different ways. One, the Japanese, who are notorious for making adult games, and like strip mahjong and strip poker things, never seem to really have enough square footage or any interest in pinball, instead going with pachinko. So you don't, not only do you not see adult games that would have probably been made by the Japanese of that time, the only other people who would have been major producers for like arcade cabinets, but you also don't really ever see any tables that are focused on anything Japanese anyways. You would have thought in the 80s and 90s that there would have been something based on Akira, Neon Genesis Evangelion, things that were big like that, Gundam, Robotech even though Robotech is 3 animes merged together and sold in the West. You just don't see any of that. On the Western side of that not happening, you also don't have a profit motive for bars, because bars can put in the strip poker, video poker machines that are actual gambling and can have nudity. So it left pinball just never really having a grip on an adult targeted market, much less than I thought it would. I thought there would have been quite a few that I just never saw as a kid, because I was never allowed in bars, as I shouldn't have been. But yeah, seems like they really don't exist. The other thing I want to say, as I'm still sitting here, is I installed Pinball Arcade and Pinball FX on my cell phone Both play fine, but they're ridiculous because you're tapping the screen and covering up half of the table. Um, Although it seems like Pinball Arcade in particular is programmed with its physics engine tied to the frame rate. So if you have a faster phone that runs at higher than 60 frames per second, the game it runs poorly or runs faster than it should. Uh, but both tables, both programs really don't work well on mobile. Maybe an iPad and a big tablet would make sense. Uh, but as I was playing that, I was looking at the graphics, and there is a percentage here that I think I kind of was subconsciously hiding myself away from. That in Pinball Arcade, these are animations still. They are animated to look very similar to what the real tables would look like, but looking at the actual photos of the tables in the Internet Pinball database, or uh, yeah, looking at play tables there, yeah, there's a difference. This is still animated, although I will still applaud Pinball Arcade for actually trying to animate things to make them look like they're realistic, as hyper realistic as they could pull off. Uh, Whereas Pinball FX does not try that at all and tries instead to make them as CG and cartoony as possible, and really tries to have something that is not pinball be sold as something that is pinball. Pinball FX version 3 is on Steam, and they've announced a reboot effectively. So the next product that they're going to release is going to be just called Pinball FX again. So that's weird. Anyways, let's jump into this table. I think that's pretty much all the catch up I need to do. Sorry it took so long. Elvira and the Party Monsters from 1989 was designed by noted industry veteran Dennis Nordman. I don't know if maybe we've seen one of his other tables. He's the mind behind other great games such as Scared Stiff, Water, Whitewater, and Dr. Dude. During the final stage of production, yeah, we haven't seen any of these other tables. Dennis was seriously injured in a motorcycle accident, so Steve and Mark Ritchie, along with Jim Patla, stepped in to help get the game into production. The game features an exciting multi-ball mode, a pair of dancing boogeymen, jumper bumpers that jump up and down on the playfield, and of course Elvira, Mistress of Dark. Approximately 4,000 of these units were produced. Oh, I should also mention Earthshaker, the sinking building. The 200 units where the building actually sunk were all pre-production models, so there was never a point really in an arcade where that mode worked. So I guess that's why they emulated it that way, so it didn't work. Still feels like it should have been just programmed in as an Easter egg, but it wasn't. If you don't know who Elvira is, she was a late night TV hostess who would host Friday night terrible movies. Often, I imagine she was airing very cheap, if not public domain, movies, and she did the what they would call the bumpers, where she would bump her footage between the commercials and the movie, just doing potentially like an introduction at the beginning and then keeping people's attention. She was notorious for being very tall and beautiful and lusty with the big cleavage, playing a vampire character. And so that's really what they're going to play up here on the table. And it kind of made her a bit of a celebrity. I'm not sure if she ever got like a comic book or any real backstory as the character that she was playing. And yeah, I don't think it ever went so far as the Ghostbusters route, where all of a sudden the adult movies, Ghostbusters 1 and 2, somehow got turned into cartoon shows for Ghostbusters. But it was definitely in that same era and that same fad. And you can even see on this table, while she is slightly slightly high in the cleavage and the bustiness, she's not being super extreme. But in 89, that might have been too extreme. I don't know if she ever actually hung out with any other monsters. Otherwise, this is just like a collection of Universal monsters. The little rubber things in front of her in the cauldron in the back there were little finger puppet toys that you would get for free in most arcades. So it is definitely a blast of a past to see those. I probably haven't made any of those in a decade or two. There's an interesting ramp on the right side there where the ball seems to potentially get stuck. Or maybe not, because it launches from a ramp so far at the top. I bet it has enough momentum to always make it anyways. Which that is a dangerous idea, but a cool idea to say the least. And I guess if the ball does get stuck, maybe it would sense that, and that would be the equivalent of locking a multi-ball. It seems like there's quite a lot of ramps on this table. A center lane shot, a ABC top lane, smaller than usual bumpers, and slightly different shape. There seems to be a lane that hits probably a standing target on the far left. So we're probably going to have to, without the probe ability to look at the table, we're probably going to just have to follow the standard goals or instructions to figure out what we're really going to do here. Notice that this one has an actual legal notice, where this is like the first one to have a legal notice built in. And so here's the flyer. Here for Elvira, big fake puffy hair. I would assume that was a wig. You wouldn't want to have to puff it up that every week. I suppose Adam's Family existed and the idea of goth chicks was setting at this point. Although Elvira kind of doesn't stick to the attitude, or at least from what I recall about her. I didn't watch a lot of her. Or I'm not sure I watched any of her, actually, other than an occasional scene or something. She seemed to be a lot more fun than just like a depressed emo goth, which it has emos and goths have kind of overlapped, certainly. And with that cleavage, it seems like she's probably got double-sided tape or a push-up bra going on there. And this might be the first instance of us seeing a flyer with a real-world celebrity. It's probably not the first instance in which we've seen a flyer with a real-world person or a rotoscoped person. But see, the jumper bumpers are different in shape. They're going to play differently, I think. But yeah, there's probably something to be said that Elvira in 89 being on TV, the resolution would have been so low that if there was a nipple slip, it would go uncaught. That is something that certainly has been happening as they start to HD old content, is that there are these occasional wardrobe malfunctions that people didn't know. So we want to collect didn't catch originally. We want to collect the barbecue bonus, score the boogie bonus, activate multiball, score a dead heads value, and earn an extra ball. Yep. Ideally, and sorry it's taken 20 minutes to get to this point. Why did it bounce out? There, it shouldn't have done that. Party. Like, ideally you would want to see hey, let's party. I lost my train of thought there. That's happening more and more as my insomnia is getting worse and worse. I will say, when playing with the Legends Gamer in the spacebar, this moves a lot slower. give you a lot more precision. But this plunger is also a little bit off the scale, so... So, we'll want to see how the bumpers play. These flippers look a little dirty yellow. So there's the barbecue bonus, which apparently gave me a free ball fairly quickly. Like, I barely hit anything. How can I get a free ball that quickly and that easily? Do have lane changes, and that was just a really easy captive ball that I just pulled off. There is a now streaming service called, what is it, Shudder? That has a similar movie presentation show, not with Elvira though. She's probably fairly old. She might look fairly good for her age, but I imagine her presenting old horror movies wouldn't make as much sense as far as her compared to her just signing autographs. I bet she wrote a book at some point. I bet she did a lot of things to increase her celebrity. And she probably was originally just the equivalent of a weather girl who didn't have a high chance of becoming a major celebrity. And she just got really popular. This would have been a time of syndication where she could have been the host on a local TV channel, and a lot of other local TV channels may have chosen to pick her up and rebroadcast her show. There is something also to be said about the fact that that there are fairly large collections of time on local channels where either they will air big blocks of they'll either air large blocks of paid commercials, paid programs, or they'll air movies late night Friday and Saturdays in the afternoon. A lot of times it would be times where a sports game would be going on normally, and if the game was delayed or canceled, they would air that. TV in general has gotten considerably worse, so I'm not sure that there's... Well, there's multiballs, so we know what locks the multiball now. It's the skull. It wants us to ride through both ramps for the jackpot. I saw it say that. So, do I have to hit both ramps at the same time? Or... because that would be a fairly hard shot. Is there a way to reload the multiball? I bet not. This angle is kind of hard to see the letters. There's basically no angle here on the cameras. Once again, this is a Pinball Arcade thing where you basically would need a mirror to see those uplanes. So instead of trying to see them, you're probably better off just ignoring them and hoping that you'll eventually get the score multiplier. I'll have to think hard here and be careful to not just slather this game, that's the word I'm trying to use, with praise that's undue just because Elvira is the good theme. I will say, yeah, sure, it's got a good theme, but this is much like some of the race car tables where there's a lot of ramps going on here, that the table is fairly over busy, where the center playfield is then has to be fairly empty, and it's almost like an artist's brushstroke, or a style at least, to make tables that have empty middle playfields so that you can have these long shot ramp shots. But yeah, so far I'm not hating it. But we're looking for a Boogie Bonus and Deadhead's value. Let's play one more game before we start to investigate what those actually are.
Hey, let's party!
This table could easily have just been a Monster Bash table, and you could have potentially licensed the music of Monster Mash. I assume by '89 that song was out. Yeah, I heavily think I recall at least a table playing the music. It is, I guess, worth mentioning that there aren't, even in '89, that there probably isn't enough storage space to put on a ROM an entire song in enough quality that you would actually be able to manage to hear it in a good quality. We are still slightly in the MIDI format, the noises, the beeps, the boops, compared to just an MP3 file or a WAV file. WAV files are never small. In fact, I just looked at the 64 disk drive prototype, and these giant floppy disks that it was going to run off of could hold up to 64 megabytes. So, yeah, a WAV file might be 12 to 64 megabytes in size, depending on the length of the song. And if you have to clip a recognizable lyric-based song to get it to play in part on a pinball table, that's probably going to be a bit of a disappointment. Particularly if you license the whole song. I doubt any music rights owner is going to be happy. I'm trying to see if maybe there's a Magnaball. It looks like there might be, but I'm not sure there is. I don't think Elvira particularly had any enemies or anything as a character. Her enemies probably were just censors and Puritans. Although maybe in the deep lore she did have an enemy or two. The quick and easiest way to score points is with the Boogie Bonus. To collect the Boogie Bonus, shoot the center eject hole. When it collect Boogie Bonus is lit, this is lit by completing the jam drop targets. Each jam earns 5,000 points. Completing the bank of jam targets scores an additional 40,000. The Boogie Bonus starts at 25,000, and each time you hit the jam, it increases by 10,000. While it's lit, while the Boogie Bonus is lit, each hit on the jumper bumpers increases the Boogie Bonus by 1,000. Once the Boogie Bonus is collected, it has a maximum of 255,000 points, which 255 is an 8-bit integer maximum number, unsigned. It carries over from ball to ball until it's collected. Sets to 25,000. Okay. The Wake of the Deadheads is a great way to rack up some points. I don't know why every sentence starts that way. Hitting each of the Deadhead spots scores 5,000 whether they're lit or not. First time all 4 Deadhead spots are completed, it scores 20,000 and lights 25,000 on the left lane. Completing the left in-lane roller scores 25. Normally the rollover scores 5,000. Second time all 4 are completed, it scores 40,000. Third time it's completed, 1 ball, it scores 50,000 and lights the 1 million center eject hole that stays lit until the ball drains. While it's lit, shooting the center eject hole scores 1 million points. Fourth time are completed, it scores 60,000. The fifth time it completed in 1 ball, it scores 70,000. Sixth time 80,000 and lights the special monster slide ramp light. Once the special is lit, each hit on the jumper bumpers and slingshots here or here alternates the lit special between the monster slide ramp and the out lane. And the right out lane, completing that collects the special and gives an extra ball. Special stays lit if you fail to collect it before the ball drains. Okay. Each time there's hit after 6th time in 1 ball, it scores 200,000. Okay. So I don't know how complicated they want me to go there. Do I have to hit it all once or multiple times?
Hey, let's party.
So it's the 2 collections of drop targets on this table that I've so far been not really focused on hitting. So no big surprise there. The center lane shot here is fairly similar to the Cyclone wheel without the wheel, where it just gives you a random reward. Which is fine, but I'm not sure I particularly want a center lane shot that has to be hit as often as it seems like you potentially would want to be aiming for that center lane shot. And hitting ramps, I guess, spells Elvira. I don't feel like the bumper jumpers really are doing anything very different. They're just taking up less, taking up slightly less space, and they look different instead of just being smaller versions of what you would normally expect from from the shape and size of a pop-up bumper. See, that would be about the slowest I think you could possibly go down that lane, and it still went perfectly fine. There is definitely a table that has a mirror so you can see the top lane because it's otherwise fairly obscured. Right. I've got to get, darn it, a center shot, and I didn't. Although I don't feel like I'm gonna really struggle on this table. This feels like a fairly simplistic table, which brings about an interesting question as, is this somehow a kid's table? Was Elvira popular enough that you could sneak it into the teenage category and not really get any complaints? Like, you kind of get into that same situation where puritanical parents that particularly care about what their kids are playing in '89 are probably not going to let them be unattended in an arcade anyways. And even by '89, I imagine a lot of arcades were at least paying lip service to don't leave your kids unattended anyways, because we don't want to babysit them. So yeah, if you were concerned with cleavage being shown to your kids, you probably wouldn't let them in an arcade in the first place. And if you're not concerned, then you probably would just not be concerned when they're if they were playing a game like this. It's not like she's making lewd sounds. Earthshaker has made more lewd sounds. And in 2021, you very well might make an argument for body positivity and no shaming because you have large breasts or happen to look good. Although there are certainly still some people out there that do engage in a level of body shaming if somebody happens to dress attractively or be comfortable dressing attractively. And my slow reaction to nudging still does not play off. There is something interesting that I realized while I was setting up the fight stick, is that there's kind of a lack of diagonal, so much nudging. Like this game really is expecting a four-way input, not an analog input like you would have on an analog input on an Xbox, or an 8-way input like you would have more on a 8-way fight stick. There's a little 3D printed device you can add to fight sticks to shift it between having a gate of a 4-way to an 8-way, because if you're playing something like Donkey Kong is very obviously and very easily to recognize a 4-way joystick. There is a distinct up, down, left, and right, and there's no room in between. Whereas if you're playing Street Fighter, almost certainly that is a 4-way joystick, and you can go in it's an 8-way joystick that would have an 8-way gate that is more like a hexagon. There's the Boogie Bonus. They didn't really emulate the Boogie arms flapping up and down. I imagine those little Boogie toys also would probably disintegrate and just turn back to oil, as a lot of plastic-based products tend to do. Or the arms would get torn off. People would occasionally knock, I imagine, a pinball up in that area and hit them.
Don't touch me there.
Alright, so there's a slightly lewd... Nah, that's a fairly lewd statement to ever say, don't touch me there. Although maybe in 2021 it's a conversation on consent. And being a strong, empowered woman You can certainly twist it however you want. I feel like we have hit enough on the left. Apparently not.
Thank you, boy.
The little boogie going up and down figures. It's not too off from what I imagine the Earthshaker building would have been. So that technology was obviously embraced fairly quickly. Although perhaps it's a little bit easier to have two pistons go up and down than it is to have an entire building go down and up.
Ooh, nice organ.
But you can also see how it is still very much the land of gimmicks.
Quick, to the monster fly.
I think I got the jackpot.
Get down, get funky.
That's not even a standard goal though. I imagine if we can unlock the wizard goals, we are going to be asked to spell Elvira and do something else. Do several things we may have already done.
Thank you, boy.
Hitting the standing targets in front of the boogies seems to not really do too much. It also seems to be a fairly dangerous shot because that feels like that could easily bounce it back and drain out if something goes wrong. Seriously, 6 million? We've really shot past the point where getting 6 million or getting any score at all seems to matter. For me, it seems like it's fairly easy to have one good game and hit major inroads with the table high scores, and even in some instances the leaderboards in general. Like, I'm at the top there. Let's see what the weekly leaderboards have to say. Like 237 million, probably a cheat. If we were to guess, though, if I got 6 million this week, 18 million, 20 million seems believable. 60 million, kind of unbelievable though. And I don't even have to scroll down that far to see where I am. I'm 33 and I'm playing this on a Friday, so it's been pretty much a week. Now, we start to have a lot of cheaters here over all time. Although, you know, 120 million seems somewhat believable, so 200 million would seem somewhat believable too. Like, there's always that possibility that somebody's just going to get really lucky and get the ball stuck under a pop-up bumper and just decide to leave it for several hours. Pinball tables in '89 probably wouldn't have any check for that, really. So if they wouldn't stop a game from playing for, say, 2 hours straight. Whereas I imagine eventually and they did institute some time limit per ball. Well, I imagine most arcade people would institute some kind of time limit. There we did. We got the deadhead score. So that is all of the regular scores. So I could either, at this point, keep on playing for practice, which I should do, just for video reasons, or if I was pressed for time, I would drain the balls out immediately and start a new game to start working on the wizard goals. I imagine I will have to spell Elvira, so shooting the monster slide, I think, is what spells Elvira, but I think it has to be lit.
Now we're cooking.
Light. Organ.
Ride both ramps for the jackpot. Lights, organ, but no action. Interesting. So I just got several shots up the ramp before.
Don't up me there. Don't up me there.
And now I get the ramp after it's too late. Well, you would want to get the score multiplier up. This is not a table that seems to be particularly focused around that. It's kind of a problem with fads more than anything. Like, whatever becomes the big new thing on the table a year previously just becomes the standard expected fare for the next table and kind of gets forgotten. This is a table where you could have probably gotten a lot more voice lines from Elvira and spent some more time in the voice actor's booth. So, score jackpot, score double slides, score 1,000,000 point shot, score 3,000,000 point shot, and collect a special. Maybe that involves spelling Elvira, but maybe not. Seems like spelling Elvira also carries on between games. Interesting. And if you, I imagine the trick here is to just get really good on the two really important ramps and get really good at locking the multi-ball, which it's not a particularly difficult multi-ball. We've seen a lot worse lately. I saw that happening and still didn't nudge it out of the way. Let's just start multi-ball and then we can just flip the flappers. I'm thinking I like these flippers. They're yellow like the Williams, but they have like markers on them where you can use that as a potential indicator of where you're going to shoot if you're paying a lot of attention to that.
Don't up me there.
These flippers also might be slightly longer than some of the others we've seen. Interesting that sometimes the ball bounces back and sometimes it doesn't.
Don't touch me there. Don't touch me there.
Come on. I'd say the bumpers around the in lanes would be something I might want to change.
How about another ball?
This one does have a ball saver feature, but Pinball Arcade being so slow to get the ball actually out on the table, it's not very useful, at least with the controllers. Oh, I guess it's not always a ball saver feature. Normally what they would do with a ball saver feature is there would be a gate at the top to give you like 30 seconds after you leave the alleyway. This definitely feels like a table. Had this just been Haunted Mansion 2, you could have basically had the exact same shots and the exact same art. But it does have more nostalgia by far by having Elvira in it. In the same way that a Ghostbusters table is much more interesting to me than Bone Busters. Although, if it was the exact same table, I still wouldn't be very happy with it. I got the R.
Thank you, boy.
So what do I have to spell to get the A? And do I need a major increase in the score multiplier, potentially, to get 2 or 3 million shots? I think we're fairly well set to have a multi-ball if I can just shoot the multi-ball, which is seemingly more difficult than it sounds. This scoring for this table does feel fairly wide in its dynamic range, because I have definitely been able to play tables that are play balls that are not scoring a million, and then I've been able to play balls that seem like they've scored 2 or 3 million.
Thank you, boy.
I think I can start a multi-ball if I can get the ball in the skull. The light bulbs in the skull probably were more interesting than you would think by 2021 standards. That probably was. Alright, Elvira 3 million lit. Alright, so if I can hit this cave, there's a 3 million point shot. Does that overlap with the 2 million shot? Maybe, maybe not. Darn it.
How about another ball?
I actually prefer this kind of scoring where doing very specific things gets you 3 million and you feel like you've really earned it. It's not just that everything gives you 10,000, regardless of how bad you're playing or how good you're playing. I guess if you can get the Elvira 3 million shot consistently over and over again, which I definitely have seen some pinball players that can just get jackpots over and over again, or score the same thing over and over again, and they basically will not drain the ball out on accident. So I guess we would need to figure out what the 1 million point shooting the monster slide 4 times before the time expires lights the 1 million slide ramp. After letting this shoot to within 12 seconds. So just hit that multiple times. Okay. Once the jackpot is scored, the party punch ramp, monster slide ramp are lit for party ramps, shooting either ramp. While multi-ball is activated, scores 250,000. Shoot it 2 times in quick succession to get the double slide worth 500,000. Multi-ball is one of the ways of scoring a lot of points on this table. To activate it, lock 3 balls. We already know how to do the jackpot. We did it once when we were playing standard balls. It's just hit both ramps. So basically get really good at locking the balls and getting really good at hitting the ramps is all I would need to do to get the rest of these achievements. That being said, I have 238 achievements still to go, and definitely haven't collected quite a lot of them on other tables. So there is a very high chance I would never have the time or energy or desire to get all the achievements, and since Steam only highlights games where you've gotten all the achievements, it's kind of pointless. Instead, I should just do what a normal person would do, which is just enjoy the games for their own sake. That is the problem with an open center playfield, though, is that you will just drain out and lose energy sometimes. It feels like the skill shot is always at the far left in the top lane, and it seems to always just immediately give you a score multiplier, which is not a terrible reward for a skill shot. Most skill shots just give you points, but being able to get a skill shot in before you've done anything else on the table, you're at double. I guess it's not always on the left side. It feels like there just might be a decent collection of stuff that stays in play or stays in whatever state it was in between balls. So that's an interesting idea. I was slowly shooting up the ramps, but I don't think I was shooting up the ramps fast enough to actually get the score up to 1 million. And yeah, you still would be better off shooting for the skull and looking for multi-ball. I guess I would say I do appreciate that there aren't any sound effects here that are super long. Like a lot of tables, we've mostly turned a blind eye to the fact that often when they're starting multi-ball, they'll play a 10-15 second sound effect that breaks your stride of gameplay and doesn't give you a nice experience. It's potentially that they were doing that on purpose too. Yeah, you have this, but even this is fairly quick. I've definitely had ones that have been more annoying and longer in the setup. I don't know if there's an inherent reason why you would need like, I don't know if there's a specific reason why you would want or need to hit to slow down the game. That was a million. Lock balls for more multiplayer again, and maybe in the next multiplayer we shoot the left, the right ramp. I'm not sure I got the jackpot either in multiball, so we should also try and get that just for score reason, if no other.
How about another ball?
And of course getting that. Get that. Get that. Miss that.
Thank you, boy.
Extra ball. Missed the shot. See if we can recover or just lock for multi-ball. It's a shame all the fun tables are too easy, which there's probably a direct overlap there too, that I feel like easy tables are more fun, and that this is definitely one of those tables where I may get all the wizard goals done with, and then motivation to play a table like this might drop quite a bit, but maybe not that much. Like, this is still a decent table. Although, if I'm thinking of something like Theater of Magic in comparison, I don't know if a table like this quite holds up. That was... I'm doing some pretty bad shots here. Struggling to get the ball. Yeah, that was no surprise that ended up in the out lane. Bouncing the ball around willy-nilly. Didn't hit it with quite enough force. Come on. Start the multi-ball. I think I might be able to get another extra ball pulling this off. The drop-down targets at the top right there, I'd hit 2 of them, so I was just bouncing the ball quite a bit off the wall. This is definitely a table I don't want to put down either. We're also quickly filling out the high score table, which we haven't seen with any other table at this point. So, yeah. Those are all legitimate scores. There's not even a difficult a pro mode to cheat anyways.
Hey, let's party.
So I need the jackpot, and otherwise this should be our last game because we're playing quite a bit here. Although, in all fairness, I did talk for like 20 minutes before I even started playing. Apologies for that. Yeah, it still is very deceptive subconsciously to look at the table art here and think that this is actually an animation and that this isn't just photos of the actual table. Which, that's the one thing I have to applaud Pinball Arcade for doing, is that they did a very good job of making it feel like you were really playing pinball visually, and most of the time even physically with the game engine, except for the times when you get the occasional slowdown. It's just all the other things, all the little bits of improvements that over the years should have been added and weren't, and the premium price to own all the tables weren't particularly helpful either. There's Skull Lock 1. Almost every game I'm getting multi-ball at least once. That might be a sign of it being a little too easy. If you're getting fairly consistent multi-ball, fairly consistent extra balls.
Thank you, boy.
If you were playing this by putting like $5 in, or $1 to get 5 games, whatever that it would have costed in '89. I don't know if you did as well as I'm doing right now, whether you wouldn't just be exhausted for the amount of time you'd been playing standing up just by your success. This might be a table where you leave a credit and for somebody else to play just because you've fairly well perfected the game. When it says lights organ, you would think the third word would be action,
Ooh, nice organ.
But I guess they wanted the lewd joke, ooh, nice organ, which I guess she said every single time, and I have not heard once because I wasn't paying enough attention. That would have been my opportunity for a jackpot, and I missed it. So a lot of places here where you can just miss. Still a lot of corners you can bump into and it not lead anywhere. So even though this is a fairly easy table, it is also a table that you could have dumbed down even more. I don't know if it needs that, but it obviously doesn't need that, but I don't know. I suppose if you weren't doing an Elvira themed table. How many instructions are here overall? Still like 200 sentences. Was there anything we missed? Pizza passage. We must have hit that at least once. Nope, there's kind of nothing more to this table. Still not happy that it resets me there. But I love it. So that's going to the favorites too. The Hall of Fame score now, I guess, is 179. Which I guess that's maybe my score? No, because the Hall of Fame score on this is 19. So my score here, I guess maybe that's what it deserves to be. Interesting. So there might be an argument to going and trying to increase your Hall of Fame score on a bunch of tables. We are now at a point where I have 9 favorite tables, but in all fairness, I've gone through, let's see, 10 plus another 8, 96, 26, 34, yeah. 9 out of about 34 tables, if I was just to estimate it, have been favorites, which is not to say I absolutely hated everything else. Like, I probably don't ever want to play this one ever again, and I probably wouldn't play Gone Nuts too often, but I could be convinced of that. I probably don't want to spend a lot of time playing Paragon or Genie, but I could see myself working through those if I was actually trying to get all the achievements. But that's kind of it. Like, all the other tables are fine. Totally playable, just not in the top tier. We have one more table for the 1980s, and then we start hitting the 90s, where we'll start to see more licensed products in particular. It also seems like, by the way, this new table, Will Nelly, it may not actually have existed, or it might actually be a brand new table. Like, so it's either a conversion kit or a custom kit, or it is let's see if we can see the table description here. Play trial version. Yeah. Will Nelly Big Juicy Melons is a retro-style table that challenges players to score as many points on the melon farm operated by a lovely Melanie Melon and her twin sisters. Well, I guess you can have sisters who happen to be twins, and you're not one of the twins. Designed by Dennis Nordham, this colorful, easy-to-learn game features a classically styled playfield tuned for a balance of randomness and skilled shooting challenges. The unique feature of this table is that it rests on a weathered fruit crate base instead of a standard pinball table legs. To finally adjust the playfield angle, crushed canned beer cans branded Whoa Nelly were included with the game to be placed between the cabinet and the crate, or owners could use their own beer cans. Interesting. Can we, with pro mode stuff? No, you don't get that unless you're, unless you are a pro mode owner. So, I think the trial mode of these tables too also stops after a few minutes, so you can't play forever. But yeah, 2015 table. It looks like something that you would have expected to have come out in the 70s. But they're being retro about it. Interesting. And that is an interesting idea of having it on a watermelon crate. So that kind of makes, like, even in 2015 you see gimmicks still happen. And so I guess maybe this table,
careful, the new guy dies first,
is 2016, and this is Ghostbusters Premium Edition. So yeah, interesting. But in 2021, that still is like 5 years since they've got a new table out. So you pretty much know that Pinball Arcade at this point is dead. They say the latest release is Frankenstein. So they are adding new content. It's just they're adding older tables, which they kind of have to do that too. Anyways, I've gone long enough. That's going to be it for this recording. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want a friend to follow me on any social media sites, there's a whole bunch of links down below. And if you want to support me further, there's a link to Patreon, or you can friend me on Steam and gift me a game off my wishlist. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.